As parents to young ones, everyone needs all the help they can get. And today's guest will help by giving so many great ideas with her big-hearted parenting approach for things like tantrums, food challenges, new siblings, bedtime, and so much more. Dr. Cathryn Tobin has been a pediatrician for 35 years. She's a mom of four, the host of the podcast Toddlers Made Easy, and the author of a recent book called Toddlers Made Easy: Becoming the Parent Every Child Needs. You can find her on social media at The Healthiest Baby, and also check out the description for access to a free download called Handle Tantrums Like a Pro. I can't wait for you to hear more from Dr. Tobin today. Welcome to the Teaching Your Toddler Show. Hello, this is Mary Jo Tinlin from the Teaching Your Toddler Show. Today, we have a great guest who has a wonderful book that I know you are going to love. Dr. Cathryn Tobin joins us today to talk to us about toddlers and about her book. Dr. Tobin, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm a pediatrician, a general pediatrician, and I've been practicing for about 35 years. I've actually just retired my office after all of after all of these years. I'm also the mother of four grown-up adult kids, and I have a great big golden doodle and a lovely 2-year-old granddaughter.
Yay. So you get to have
Yes.
your things in practice right there with your family.
That's right. I've gone through them and getting to go through them from a very different and wonderful perspective.
Oh, excellent. Oh my gosh. Well, this book is amazing. And it's a DK book, so you can imagine that the layout is beautiful. I love how
Yeah.
it's just so bite-sized. I was provided a copy just so
Oh,
everyone
that's
knows.
nice.
I mean, it's so cute. It has such great advice. So tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book.
It's funny because I didn't intend to write another book. I've already written, this is my third book, and the other two I wrote decades ago. But the publishers approached me and we had a really great conversation about what was on the market and what potentially was missing. And it struck me that there's this big gap that I wanted to fill. And that gap relates not all the books, most of the books seem to focus on how to change our kids, how to get them to behave better. But in my way of thinking, there's one step that comes first that was missing, and that's how we even think about a kid's misbehavior. And by kids right now, I'm really talking about toddlers, like the 1 to 3, maybe 4-year-olds. Although the steps in the book really are good for children of all ages, I am particularly focused on the younger kids.
All right. So you're talking about sort of the root cause of why are they behaving the way we don't want them to behave is what you're saying, I think, right?
Not even so much why, but how we think about it,
How we
because
think.
how we
Okay.
think about it really influences how we manage it. And this is such innocent behavior at this age, and I'm not even sure misbehavior is the right term for it. But when we change how we think about it, it becomes much easier and naturally much easier to deal with it calmly and with composure. And it's that little piece that I really wanted to focus on or talk about or at least include, and as well as the kind and but still confident and still firm ways of helping shape our kids' behavior and all the teaching that needs to come later, because that's a really I like people to think about how to deal with discipline in the moment and after. And I hope that really has come out in the book because it's what happens after that's so important, not just what happens in the moment.
Right. Right. And because that continues to sort of condition them into their behavior in other ways, right?
Like the moment we can sort of just deal with things safely, but it's later
Hmm.
that we can really teach those skills that the kids need to learn and that they do learn with time.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you have an example or two of what you're talking about?
Let's say a child grabs a toy from another child. Um, usually we think about dealing with it just right then and there. And yes, you do have to deal with it right then and there. But later you can teach your kids how to ask for a turn or how to share or how to ask, can I play with you? And these are actually really effective ways of changing a child's behavior without yelling, without punishment, without making them feel bad. And they're so young. They really just need to be taught these skills that they haven't had time on this planet to necessarily develop.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
love how there's like quizzes in there for parents, and that I also you have sections on 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and then you
Yeah.
and the little bubbles that tell you, here's what a 1-year-old's concerned with, here's what a 2-year-old's concerned with. And I think it's so good, like you're saying, sort of the mindset of the child, so that a parent can then understand what's happening and why are they doing
Yeah.
the things they're doing, right?
I think realistic expectations are a
Hmm.
huge part of what is missing in today's discipline as well. There's very little talk about what can we ask of our kids, but a lot of how to deal with the misbehavior that often results from unrealistic expectations. And that is not meant to be blame. It's just once those big milestones are over, we just don't talk about milestones as much.
That's true. That's true. I was going to ask you, how have you seen things? You mentioned that you've just retired from a long practice. How did you see things sort of evolve over time from your
Oh,
practice?
there's really huge changes over the
Mm,
years. I've certainly seen lots of parenting styles come and go. Early on when I started my practice and also when my kids were little, the focus was on giving 3 warnings and then sending them to their room for a timeout. And I never liked that. I was never happy with that. And although I didn't have a name to use for what I was doing or how I was handling things, I I did not support that for very long because I just didn't find it worked. So many parents would say, I send my kid to a timeout and they come right out and do the same misbehavior right again. So I certainly have seen that wave come and go and into this now. I'm hesitant to use the word gentle parenting, but that direction has certainly come in and changed dramatically the approach to parenting. I don't even use that term myself for how I promote parenting or handling problems. I talk more about big-hearted responses rather
hmm.
than gentle parenting.
I love that term, big-hearted responses. Um, because yeah, and I wonder, now we're sort of in I guess the generation that's parenting now, they were treated a little differently as children themselves, right?
Yes. I mean, I see that myself with my daughter, who I'm not quite sure what term to use, how my kids were raised, but it's wonderful watching this generation parent, except I think sometimes there's too much emphasis on the gentle component of things and forgetting the real need to teach and
Mm.
guide. And you know what? There's one other thing which I think comes from having been doing this for so long is I've seen with a lot of my patients went from newborns to new parents and then came back to me as new parents. And so I was able to see how important our own habits have on how what our kids pick up. And that's one part of parenting we don't talk enough about is the example we're setting in all those tiny little ways makes a huge difference in what our kids pick up and learn more than the lectures we give them or the bribing or the nagging or the timeouts or the gentle parenting. It's who we are and how we parent and how we interact with people in the world.
Mm. So they're seeing you talk to the person at the grocery store. They're
Yes.
seeing you, how they,
All those little things we give so little thought to.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm, right. Yeah, I can imagine that it's definitely very different. I wonder too, and I don't know if you have a thought on this, but like people are so worried about other people, like, well, not just judging them, but also potentially like getting them in trouble for certain behaviors in public, right? If they yell or, of course, certainly if they spank their child or something like
Yes.
that. I mean, that's a huge thing, I would assume.
Yeah, I think parenting in public is a really hard situation because there are going to be all these eyes on you with very different opinions. Some will be supportive, which we don't really think about, but there will certainly be those there to criticize you. But that's a very small part of our parenting. And it's more all those invisible little things. You hold the door open for somebody, you say thank you to them, you treat people with respect regardless of their position. These are the little things that kids really pick up. I certainly see it with my own kids. Uh, and I'll give my husband uh, the rewards for that because he's an exceptionally polite human being.
Oh.
And my kids are exceptionally polite and caring, and I can see where it came from. We never talked to them or lectured them, or but they you pick up a lot from your parents that we're not even thinking about.
Um, do you have any specific, like, really interesting or crazy stories from over the years with your experience with toddlers or children in general, I guess?
One of the stories I often tell is about I have four kids, and two of them are very easygoing, and one was more of a challenge than, every family has their challenging kid. And he's the most wonderful human being. However, as a 3-year-old, he was a handful. And there was one trip we took to Naples, Florida, and it was just, we were having such a relaxing and wonderful time. And we decided to go out for dinner on our way home from a day at the beach. And we were sitting at the table, all having fun. And my husband reached across the table and took a French fry or a potato chip, something. Yes, we let our kids have that occasionally. From my son, who then just had the biggest meltdown and took his arm and swept everything off the table. Some of it ended up in the pool that we were sitting right next to. And it was one of the biggest tantrums I've ever had to deal with in public. And it actually had this amazing outcome that I'll never understand and can't forget how grateful I was to everybody. But I took my son away into the corner where we just sort of calmed down there. And as we were walking back to the table, people sort of clapped for him and gave him high fives and said,
Oh.
"Yeah, I don't like it when people take my food either." They were just incredibly supportive and kind. And that's never happened again, but it was a lovely experience for my son who
Mm.
who felt, he didn't feel ashamed after.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. What a day, I'm sure. That's one of the things you talk about in the book. You talk about tantrums, you talk about potty learning, I think is how you say it in the book, right? Picky eating or eating situations, sleeping, right? Like some of those things, are there specific like takeaways that you have from any of those tips that you can impart on our listeners?
Yeah. Well, some of them I'm sure you've heard many times, but how natural and normal tantrums are and how important it is just to get comfortable with them because they're going to happen regardless and they're healthy. Picky eating is a really big problem and it comes in many different shapes and flavors. Many, some can be avoided by just recognizing that there is a stage where kids start to express their independence and may also experience, fearfulness around new foods. But being supportive and offering choices and making sure you always have a food your child's comfortable with without getting into food wars. Like I would do whatever you could to avoid a food war or asking your kid to take another bite or saying dessert, you won't get dessert until you eat this because it's the food wars that really make life difficult at mealtime and can be maybe not 100% avoided, but hugely avoided just by recognizing, again, for a certain proportion of picky eaters, it's just a natural phase through this toddler stage.
Yeah.
Bed,
You're
bedtime is another biggie where
hmm
there's a lot of problems with separation. And what I have found really helpful with patients is recognizing that it's not kids trying to be difficult, it's kids having a hard time separating. It's the only time in their life where they're without an adult at this age. And just like it's hard to say goodbye at daycare or drop offs or when you go out, it's the same thing at bedtime. And if you let your child know you understand, yes, it's hard to say goodnight, but still hold firm because they need you to be firm for them to feel safe. So, no, we won't have 5 books. Why don't we pick 2 books and I'll read them in the morning? That can really help make the transition smoother.
Hmm. I never thought about that from the separation standpoint. I mean, I did think it was more of a control thing, but that makes complete sense. Like you said, they spent the entire day with you or with an adult, like you said,
Yes.
in some way, and then now they don't have that. They have to let go
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Transition objects really help there. If I don't,
Mm,
my kids certainly, some of them loved having a stuffed animal or a blankie, and that made it so much easier. Other kids, it doesn't work for them, but if you can encourage a transition object, it really makes it easier for a child to feel alone but not alone.
right. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Any others that you can think of?
Um,
Along that line, you said one of the notes in the things that I got for as in preparation was saying goodbye is easier. How can you help people with that?
that was a big problem in my family with my youngest child, with the baby. Uh, and what helped with her may help with other children, but a few things. Again, recognizing that children don't have a sense of time. And
Mm,
so when you say goodbye, they don't really understand when you're going to come back. So just acknowledging again with your child, it's really hard to say goodbye. It's hard for you and it's hard for me. Let them know what's gonna happen. You're gonna go into your classroom. Your teacher's gonna play with you, or you're sit in circle time, and then helping them to feel connected. We used to put a little picture book in the my daughter's backpack, and so we would take a quick look of it before she left. We draw the little heart on our hands, and so we each felt a connection. But
mm,
actually, what helped the most with my daughter per se, and has helped with many other families, is realizing it's the separation from you. So if they go and then they have a good time, it's not that they're not happy where they are, it's just the actual moment of separation. And so we started to pick up a friend on the way to daycare. So I was able to help another family by picking up their child. And the two of them walking in together made it so much easier than sending my daughter off by herself. And also asking your child, if they're old enough, what do you think would help make this easier? Because kids have a lot of the answers. We forget to ask them.
that's a great point. Yeah. I like that. We forget to ask them. Yeah. I mean, especially like when they're very little, you can't, right? But like you
Yes,
said,
of
once
course.
they start to be able to verbalize things, you can. Oh, those are great. I love that picking up a friend because now they're in it together, right? Like
Yes.
they're not
Support.
alone. Yeah, they have
Yeah.
support. That's great. That's amazing. Um, one of the other things that I thought was interesting in here that I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and you clearly experience this because you have multiple children, but preparing for a sibling.
Yes. You know, we always went on the assumption that we are giving our child a gift because your siblings for life are there. And so although a lot of people suffer and feel guilty about adding in another child and what they're taking away from the first one, I'd encourage you to think of the gift. I'd also encourage you not to make too much of the actual moment of them meeting each other. It's not as memorable to a child as it is to us.
Mm,
So don't worry. What I'm saying is, don't worry if it doesn't go well. Preparation is a big thing. Like, there is no question how we talk about the baby and how it impacts on a toddler's life can create a lot of jealousies. And this does take time to both develop and undo. So I would be very careful in terms of not blaming everything on the baby. So,
mm, mm,
if your child needs your attention and the baby's crying, instead of saying something about, well, the baby's crying now, I can't, say instead something like, I'd love to play with you. Once my hands are free, what should we do? Take
mm.
again the weight off the baby. I'd also plan for having a box of special toys that only come out when you feed the baby so that the baby gets fed and your toddler gets special toys to focus on, just so that they feel they're getting something as well, so they don't experience the baby as always taking away something from them.
Ah. Is that what causes when they say, they'll maybe have some regression in like potty training and things like that? Is that because they don't feel that, because they feel like they're getting neglected a little bit and that kind of thing, like with the toys would help alleviate
I,
that?
I think to a certain amount, I'm not sure how much we can avoid things like that
Mm.
because, here all of a sudden is this new human being and it's a
Mhm.
huge change in a child's life. And there is a certain amount of upset that, well, not for every child, but for some children, they experience it as upset in a negative way. And most kids, it's negative and positive. And I think along those lines, also just allowing your child, if they say negative things, don't take it away, just be understanding. Yes, it's hard having a new sibling. She cries a lot. I get it.
Mhm.
And instead of saying, you don't feel that way, you love your sister.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
I
you're
think
validating
also
them. Hmm.
realizing relationships, you've got a whole lifetime to work on their relationships and don't feel like you have to do it all right now. And also don't assume your child will be jealous. Some kids are and some kids aren't. Some people are just more jealousy prone and not everyone is. And I guess another thing to think about is some kids like being the helper, but some kids don't. And so
Hmm.
it comes naturally to ask, can you run and get me a this or can you run and get me that? But I'd notice how your child responds to it.
Yes, that's true. I remember now when my youngest son was born, my daughter is very much a nurturer and she loved helping. And I never sensed
Yes.
any jealousy. She loved, but she was a little bit older also. She was like 5, I think, at the time. So, but she loved to be the helper. I love that you kind of employ them by their strengths there.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. Do you have any like special secret mom hack that you can tell us, or any like little tip that you think maybe people don't know or wouldn't or don't talk about that we can leave the listeners with?
My first one, I have two things actually,
Okay.
but one of them is what I call a power pause. And I really like to encourage parents to create a bit of space between a child's misbehavior that's driving them crazy and their reaction to it. So if safety allows, take a moment and allow your nervous system to calm down. Because I think it's important to remember, for parents or caretakers, you're a human being too. You have the same fight or flight response and you're getting revved up. And that if you could take a moment, figure out what works best for you, how to calm down. It might be feeling your feet on the ground or counting to 10 or singing a song or walking a few steps away, but take that moment. And it's just a few seconds, but the more you do it, the quicker you learn to just let your system calm down so that you can then parent and handle the situation in a way that you feel proud about and how you want to handle it. I think if you only remembered one thing, that would be it.
That's a
Is
great
to,
one.
yeah. And then my my special thing is about taking a big-hearted interpretation.
Mm.
And let me just explain what I mean by that. And that has to do with what I spoke about initially, which is how we look at misbehavior. That if you take a moment before responding to your child's behavior and just instead of thinking of your child as misbehaving, think of them as immature
Mm.
or inexperienced, it takes the weight off. It's a very generous interpretation of their behavior that's actually based on reality. It is not permissive. I'm not suggesting you let things go, but it'll allow you to naturally handle things in a way that feels genuine in a calmer way. Often,
Hmm.
I think with gentle parenting, we're faking it.
Oh,
Um, we don't feel that calm, but this allows you to feel calmer because you see the innocence of your child's behavior
yeah.
as their brain is maturing and catching up. And again, I'm talking young children
Hmm.
here.
Hmm. Yeah. Right. Right. When they're too little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then yeah. Oh, those are great. Thank you. Those are amazing. Well, Cathryn, tell us, where can we find your book, and then where can we find out more about you?
So my book is available through any major bookseller as well as Amazon and Indigo. Um, and I'm at healthiest underscore baby. I also have a podcast by the same name of the book. The book is Toddlers Made Easy, and my podcast is also by the same name.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure that those are linked in the show notes so that people can find you and find out more about
Thank
you,
you.
follow you, listen to your podcast and all the things too. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
I know that all of these great tips, and I hope that the listeners do check out your book. It's a great, great book.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank
nice to have met you.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This has been the Teaching Your Toddler Show with Mary Jo Tinlin. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a 5-star review or a thumbs up so we can reach more parents like you. To be notified when new shows post, please subscribe by sending an email to subscribe@teachingyourtoddler. For more expert interviews, fun activities, and storytime podcasts, please visit our website at teachingyourtoddler.com. All of our shows are also posted as videos as well on our YouTube channel at Mary Jo Tinlin. Find us on Facebook at Teaching Your Toddler, X at Teaching Toddler, Instagram at Teaching Your Toddler, and make sure you check out our past shows. We have so many diverse topics. There's most likely more shows that you will enjoy. Thanks for joining us, and come back and see us again real soon.